Despite its significance, it is rare to see communities who have devoted their lives by abandoning land altogether and only living with water. And yet there are tribes like the Uros who will surprise you with their way of life. Water, our source of life. It is ubiquitous, taking the form of oceans, rivers, lakes, glaciers in the mountains, and icebergs in the polar regions. Water covers 70% of the Earth's surface and has always been the first stage in the emergence of life. All life was born out of water, and all lives depend on it. Lake Titicaca is one of the world's few ancient lakes, thought to be 3 million years old. It is the largest freshwater lake in South America and the highest of the world's large lakes. The countries of Peru and Bolivia share ownership of this astoundingly beautiful lake. But even more amazing are the extraordinary people that live in and around the lake. The Uros have taken the maxim living with nature to a whole new level. Instead of living near the water source, these Uros people live on the lake itself. Carlos Edward Luano Suana is a descendant of the Uros. He lives in Puno, a city on the shore of Lake Titicaca, and works as a tour guide, enlightening the rest of the world with knowledge of his ancestors' past.
Los Uros vendría a ser una civilización muy antigua que data desde los tiempos pre-incaicos, ¿no? Estamos hablando de los años 800. Los Uros vienen a ser los hombres más antiguos que tiene Sudamérica. Estamos hablando de los hombres de los Arawak. Los Arawak son un pequeño grupo que vendrían a ser como los nómades, los más antiguos que vienen aquí, que venían de pesca, de caza, donde había abundancia la pesca o la caza, ahí es donde se quedaban.
These beautiful floating islands are entirely man-made. The Uros people once built these floating islands as a defensive mechanism, as they could be moved if a threat was detected. Today, Lake Titicaca has 78 floating islands of varying sizes. Smaller islands are home to 2 or 3 families, whilst the larger islands can support up to 10 families. In a census conducted in 2011, the area was purported to have more than 2,300 families. The Uros families here have used the lake's inherent resources to build their homes and livelihood. Lake Titicaca is home to an abundance of totora plants, a reed-like sedge that grows in dense wetland thickets. And it is this plant that is used to create these floating islands, the home of the Uros.
Se tiene que buscar un lugar adecuado donde sea que no sea más lejos o más cerca. Un lugar muy tranquilo se tiene que estar, rodeado de la totora siempre, porque en el agua abierto es más, como se puede decir, tiene bastante viento.
Roger Pacompia Yalahui is a native of Lake Titicaca's waters. He lives on one of the islands with his family. Roger shares how a typical island is built.
Una isla flotante en realidad se construye en un año. Para hacer una isla flotante, el material más importante para nosotros es la raíz de la totora, ¿no? Que es esta. lo que se llama quile en nuestro idioma aymara, ¿no? Esta raíz está compuesto 80% de algas y raíz y 20% de lo que es de tierra. Quile, ¿no? Estas raíces tenemos que conseguir viajando unos 15 o 20 kilómetros dentro de la reserva. Y entonces, en ese momento, nosotros, los 10 familias, primero tenemos que cortar, la raíz de la totora, cortar en bloques para poder trasladarlo hasta esta parte. Luego de lo que tenemos los bloques, ahora vamos a colocar un palo de eucalipto en cada esquina de cada bloque. Ahora vamos a empezar a amarrarlo.
After being cut, the roots remain alive. After 3 months, they start to amalgamate, and in 5 to 6 months, the roots have completely fused to create one huge block of an island. The island remains sturdy enough to build on and keeps afloat with the buoyancy of the thick roots. Although these islands can be moved like boats, they are anchored in the shallow regions of the lake, which can hold depths of up to 15 to 23 meters. Centuries ago, the Uros people were heavily discriminated against by the Spanish conquistadors. As a result of repeated invasions of their land, the Uros fled and settled on Lake Titicaca, forging a living on the water and maintaining a peaceful life. They now depend heavily on the aquatic systems of Lake Titicaca and other areas of rivers and lakes for their livelihood, hunting birds, collecting eggs, and fishing.
Porque en la ciudad se tiene que pagar la luz, agua, desagüe y transportarse de un lugar para otro, todo es plata. En cambio, vivir en los Uros es muy tranquilo. No tienes que pagar la luz, no tienes que pagar agua, desagüe, la movilidad.
One of the main forms of sustenance for the Uros is fishing. The lake's immense depth and reach provide the people with various freshwater fish. Roger regularly casts a net out in the lake at night. This morning, he sets out to collect his catch for the day.
Las redes semanalmente ponemos 4 veces, pero nosotros tenemos que saber instalar las redes también. Buscamos las partes de donde podemos sacar más o menos unos 5 o 6 kilos.
Yellow karachi and maori are freshwater fish that are quite common to the lake, but the existence of these fish is also seasonal. Today, Roger has managed to catch a decent amount, enough to sustain his family for a few days.
A pescar nos han enseñado nuestros abuelos, porque en esta comunidad siempre la actividad antigua es la pesca. Nosotros hemos tenido que seguir o mantener la cultura de nuestros abuelos.
Following the traditions of their ancestors, the Uros also indulge in bird hunting. Using homemade shotguns, they hunt for seagulls, ducks, and flamingos. But today, Roger decides to use a duck trap.
Tenemos que instalar ya, primero preparar un pequeño pedazo del hilo y ver en los totorales la parte más o menos donde andan las aves. Y entonces tengo que yo instalar en la parte, en su camino del ave, y entonces a la hora que llega el ave que va pasando por el camino, y el ave se va enredando en el cuello, y es muy fácil cogerlo.
Apart from the fish and the birds, the Uros diet is primarily Andean in nature, with products like potatoes, canigua, quinoa, and rice extremely common with the islanders. Incredibly, the totora plant is also part of the Uros diet.
Al igual que en la ciudad, se tiene la necesidad de tener las frutas. Nosotros la fruta imaginaria tenemos como la banana, lo conocemos, la banana de los Uros, lo pelamos y es muy deliciosa. Es como la lechuga, ¿no? Nosotros conocemos como la banana de los uros, porque se pela y se come. Solamente la parte blanca no podemos comerlo, ¿sí? Lo conocemos como una fruta.
The Uros have been exceptional in the way they have built their homes, but they have also embraced modern technology with their use of solar panels. On the 78 man-made floating islands of South America's Lake Titicaca, the Uros, an ancient people, have created a community entirely dependent on the lake and its resources.
Realmente yo le puedo indicar que la isla puede durar eterno, aunque muchos digan que no puede durar 40, 50 años, ya después la isla, porque la isla, cuando solamente puede morir, cuando se deja de mantener la isla.
These islands are made entirely out of totora reeds, and as a result, the bottom layers of the islands are submerged in water. This leads to the totora reeds rotting, forcing the Uros to constantly add new reeds to the top of the island. Today, Rogers sails out on his boat to harvest some totora plants as part of the routine maintenance of his island.
Sí, nosotros tenemos que ver en qué parte más o menos hay la totora buena. Como la totora crece así, y tenemos que saber cortar también la totora. Tenemos que cortar más o menos 30 centímetros para arriba para que siga creciendo. Si lo cortamos de lo más abajo, la totora ya no crece.
Once cut, these fresh totora reeds are brought onto the island and positioned on the surface in a crisscross pattern. Although a good totora reed can last up to 15 days on average, most of them only last 5 to 7 days. Not only do these totora plants act as an island for the Uros, they are also used to build the walls of their homes.
Antiguamente había una casa que se llama Chujlia, ¿no? Esa era casa ancestral de nuestro ancestro, o sea, de nuestros abuelos. En esa habitación podían vivir una familia, pero ahora los jóvenes hemos tenido que modificar una habitación ya cuadrada, ¿no? Que le decimos uta, ¿no? Mayormente ahora las familias ya utilizan lo que es la habitación más grande, porque en ella puede vivir 2 hasta 3 familias.
Rheumatism is quite common in this region, and the Uros believe that it is a result of the humidity. To alleviate this concern, when homes are built, their base is raised slightly above the surface of the island to avoid humidity. A typical island home can consist of bedrooms, a kitchen, and even an open resting area. The islands, though charming, have their share of problems. Melina Soana Koila is another resident from a bigger cluster of islands in Lake Titicaca. She has lived on this lake her whole life.
Y yo vivo aquí con mis hijos. A veces sufrimos de reumatismo, de la lluvia. A veces los niños van a la escuela. Porque mis abuelos, mis mamás sufren del reumatismo. Porque cuando dormimos en el peso sale la humedad, sudamos mucho y sufrimos del reumatismo. Ya no podemos caminar en 30, 40 años, ya no se puede caminar.
In addition to the humidity and resulting afflictions, the islanders here also face another danger. Because of their inherent isolation, the islands have no access to wide electricity.
Antes muchos quemaban las casas, los niños. Se caía la vela. Nosotros siempre trabajamos en la noche, a veces no hay tiempo en día. Y trabajamos la artesanía, vamos a pescar. A veces dejamos a los niños con la vela porque se van a apagar. A veces cuando se duermen no apagan la vela. Después la vela se cae al suelo Ya se incendia toda la casa y niños más.
Y ha pasado en el año 2000, se ha incendiado una casa de una familia con 3 niños. Yo vi eso y era bastante cruel cómo se quemaban.
Not only was there no electricity, the totora reeds are highly flammable, making the use of candles and lanterns extremely hazardous. In the 90s, Peru's president, Alberto Fujimori, visited the Uros Islands and saw the difficulties the islanders were facing. He then arranged for the use of solar panels for all the inhabited islands.
Porque muchas familias quedaban incendiadas, las islas quedaban incendiadas. Él vio esa problemática. Los padres se iban de pesca o a hacer algunas actividades y los niños haciendo la tarea con la vela. Le digo, se acabó los problemas cuando ya teníamos los paneles solares, gracias al presidente.
Unfortunately, Lake Titicaca's breathtaking beauty and the Uros people's distinctive lifestyle have started to draw hordes of tourists to the region. But the islanders have accepted the tourists with open arms. The thriving tourism industry has given the Uros a much-needed additional income.
Los turistas empezaron a llegar a nuestra isla hace 10 años. Y es muy importante que los turistas nos vengan a visitar, porque en la parte donde estamos nosotros es muy natural, ¿no? Siempre estamos manteniendo nuestra cultura, ofreciendo nuestros trabajos y recibiendo con mucho cariño y amor a todos los turistas que nos vienen a visitar a nuestra isla.
The work created by the burgeoning tourism can be divided into 2 distinctive categories. The women here will often be found weaving fabrics and creating handicrafts for sale. The men will carve culturally specific miniature items out of totora reeds to sell as souvenirs. Additionally, tourists are often taken on traditional boat rides on Lake Titicaca, a once-in-a-lifetime experience that only the Uros can offer.
Gracias a lo que es la visita del turismo, ya tenemos un pequeño ingreso familiar con la artesanía que nosotros ofrecemos. Pero yo quisiera que mis hijos sean más que yo, que tengan una profesión buena para el futuro. La idea mía es que yo no quisiera que mis hijos se queden acá. Yo quiero que mis hijos sean unos profesionales para el futuro.
The community was once bustling with barter trade. The people would barter totora reeds on the mainland in exchange for grain and other food. But with the emergence of tourism, this practice is now fading. Roger still travels to the nearby mainland to buy certain necessities for his family. But despite that, he is certain that he will never abandon his island. For him, life on the lake is tradition.
Ahora nos hemos acostumbrado a estar con los amigos a diario, compartir la idea, demostrar la vida que nosotros tenemos, demostrar la cultura que llevamos. Ya con mi esposa vivo casado 8 años, porque en esta comunidad no existe lo que es el divorcio. Acá la comunidad vive tranquilamente y muy sano, ¿no? Y muy lejos de lo que es el divorcio. No, es muy raro para nosotros, ¿no? Eso siempre hemos podido mantener desde nuestros ancestros. Para nosotros es muy importante el lago Titicaca porque nos da la vida.
The Uros people are completely self-sufficient, living in harmony with their surroundings. Harnessing the natural replenishing source of Lake Titicaca, these ancient people have created a system of coexistence that is a marvel in itself. The spectacular charm and beauty of this place is a sight to behold. But it is the Uros people's simple way of life and innovation that will long be remembered. In the deep blue waters of the Pacific Ocean, hugging the coasts of the Philippines, lives an ethnic group known as the Bajau. The magnificent oceans of the world carry the source of all life, water. Humanity's absolute dependence on it can be seen in the lives of tiny communities around the world who still live with the ocean. In Southeast Asia, the Bajau tribe has created a tiny community that lives entirely on water. The harsh environment and unpredictable climate have never stopped them from doing the impossible. These seafaring gypsies have forged a living in the choppy seas away from the stability and comfort of land. Over the last few decades, many of these tribes have migrated closer to land. Nevertheless, they have still held onto their culture of living on the sea, settling in coastal areas in close proximity to land. Bajaus are a nomadic seafaring tribe, constantly in search of the next ideal maritime spot to settle in. Although the history of the Bajau is unclear, many believe that they were driven out to sea by population pressures and more dominant tribes. They sought solace in the tranquility of the sea, ultimately earning the title People of the Sea. In the central Visayas region of the Philippines is the island province of Bohol, where a Bajau village has been set up in the Bohol Sea. Hugging the shore, the village is built entirely out of wood. The platforms are anchored with wooden pylons driven into the seabed. Mario Kuham, the chief of the village, comes from a family who settled here close to 40 years ago.
May na matutulan daw isinan. 300 pamilya. Bagi atago na kay may naan eh. Na alam man sa di pa ko sa kami na pay ninaan. Nya kami bilahay mag patan na matahik ito apay nakaluman kami. Alaman niya sa di kaluman kami matahik ito. Kay alaman niya tanak kami. Angkan kami alum pagusaha marilaw ito.
Owing to their maritime heritage, most Bajau men earn a living as fishermen. Jimmy Karalani is a free-diving spear-gun fisherman. Learning the skills from his legendary forefathers, Jimmy has honed them to perfection whilst coexisting with his coastal surroundings. His daily routine starts at 8 in the morning.
Pagsa ko may pakalaw ya, kao na siya pamana. Pag tinilaw, tinagtilod na siya basi, tinilod. Katis tinilod na ng untupara na. Katis pag sa untupara, napatuhon na siya. Alam man niya ng sandi, badyaw man. Pagkatis siya mana, mga niyaraing ng buwate, nilabuan na siya bangkay, buwate naan, nilabuan. Katis nilabuan, nilumangi ang handa. Lumungan mareho. Ani niyaraing pinana na siya, tinuhog na siya makanaylon.
Not far from the village, Jimmy prepares for his free dive. He wears a primitive homespun form of fins made entirely out of wood. Although traditionally the Bajaus use wooden homemade goggles for their free diving, Jimmy uses a modern scuba diving mask as the sea is not clear closer to land. Once equipped, Jimmy grabs hold of his spear gun and focuses all his energy towards the dive. Preparing himself for the hunt, he slows his breathing and looks calmly into the waters beneath, reaching an almost meditative state.
Ano uli, amang patuhon ng hapnapas. Pahali ki. Pagkatis pahali, patuhon na. Pagkatis patuhon, yung anda na rin nga mana na. Pagkatis yung mana, mga niyaray ni Luwan ni Bangka.
These Bajau fishermen have the capacity to dive down to the depths of the sea and stay underwater for up to 5 minutes. It is for this reason Jimmy calms himself down before a dive. Focusing on his breathing and reaching a trance-like state helps to slow his heart rate and metabolism to reduce his oxygen intake. At depths of 20 meters, water pressure is up to 3 times of that on the surface, compressing lungs that are already lacking oxygen. These habitual free divers have mastered the ability to withstand the pressures of staying deep underwater for long periods of time. Jimmy free dives all the way down to the seabed and proceeds to utilize a unique skill of the Bajau. He walks.
Mangtabon na ora mo le na siyab. Binabilian pe ni ano agora. Katis binabilian ni agora amli takakana mo le ni luma. Pagpole ni luma natuli na kabi na. Ay ako mo panapay bang patuho nanulog na panapak. Nabang buat sali no tinelas bang mareya. Buat ito ro iya panapak bang mareya pangambay. Buat ay pangan lumangan. Dambila sabtangan ng ambay. Katis ang ambay agpihay.
Shirking off the pressure and the urge to gasp for air, Jimmy remains focused on the hunt. Once he locates a fish, he wastes no time in raising his spear gun and taking aim. With an absolute mastery of his weapon, he pulls the trigger and bags his first fish of the day.
Tug ni nailo ni akati sa milang ang halapana, agpihan na sa lumungan na sa magpihag limutan. Akati sa limutan mga niya rayong pinana na siya, tinuhog na siya nylon. Akati sa gilapan, nagtilod.
Jimmy repeats this process several times a day, a strenuous effort that takes a toll on his body. To prevent himself from exerting any unnecessary energy, Jimmy will swim against the current when he is underwater. This will ensure that when he surfaces, the natural flow of the current will carry him towards the boat without him having to swim towards it. The simplicity of their daily routine masks the miracles that these men perform. The physicality and technical expertise required to do what they do can only be explained by the fact that these are people living in pure harmony with the rhythms of the sea. Jimmy's hunting will sometimes lead him to find tuklabo, various types of shellfish that can be sold for extra income.
Alas 2 sa muli na, sinilo ninyang naiyay, na sinamu na siya ko. Sibil, kakanta iloy, dapabilihin. Pagka kaniniya na sinisi, niya na sinay, tinatan na ya.
Although freediving brings with it serious health risks like blackouts underwater, many of the Bajau have naturally evolved to master the various risks involved.
Tinoon ako'y panditaling ako. Pag na ako tinoon ay makuha karanakan ko eh. Pag umus siya katis pa tinoon ay ko pag diata ko di bangka eh panditaling ako. Pag panditaling ako eh. Minute haling nahalam na pahali na. May pa minuto. Hali na. May pa pahali patuhon na. Nalam na pandi. Ito bang sa karapito na ako siya, malay na ba, malay na tuod. Akati siya malay na pahuway na. Paghuway doon ang lawi. May panatuli ka na siya pamana. Alam man niya siya di trabaho, alam man niya pagkakan.
The extraordinary skills of the Bajau fishermen are passed down from father to son, paving the way for the next generation to take care of the family. Ahmad and Robin Nadle are a father-son fishing team. Under the tutelage of his father, Robin has mastered the waters, learning breath control and fishing techniques. At only 15 years of age, Robin is now considered an expert spear gun fisherman.
Ang kana ko ba't dito makausama nilaut ya ba kung may pinagpanduan ni Sima, si Ina. Ang kana ko makausama dito makay ng amaya patuhuni. Saka ako amaya kaut na pain para kami makakakan. Subay kami tinabangan na pain ni Tuhan. Upayin patuntulin kami, upayin buwanin kami kusog na pain. Ya dohe pakusahan kami alaman niya sade.
Kasanto dia ya tao na buat tinaan buat ya. Sprint na buat ya. Ma simay buat tinaan polmanay. Buat tinaan na iya ya maya buat aku sali.
Bajau fishermen tend to fish in pairs to minimize risk. Ahmad and Robin look out for one another in case they spot sharks in the open water, or if one of them succumbs to fatigue underwater.
Ako'y may kami Marilaw tinaan. Sipakano'y kami akan nakalitan. Yamahiya. Alam na kami makatuntol patuhon. Yahit katawan kami mariom junya itu. Apayay mamanga naay. Angkan kami makapulay na ay. Yadwa kuya makatabangi. Baya ko marikiriki yan na pa na kuya tinabangan ni iyay. At ipakano'y.
Bang kami buat amana, biya kami karuangan na ka anak ko, na buat bang kami binuanan ni Tuhan, na buat yahay pamon kami saka 5 kilo, 3 kilo, buat pabalian kami ni Agora, saka buat tabali, saka 600, mag 700, na buat hahap na palasan kami akabali na buwas, akakakan na kami.
These Bajau fishermen spend practically the whole day toiling out in the ocean, looking for enough fish to sustain their family. With the sun setting, Jimmy and his son Aidi return home after a hard day's work in the vast seas. Jimmy hands over his day's catch to his wife, who fulfills the traditional role of the Bajau women, that of a homemaker. She prepares a simple meal consisting of fish, a staple food for the family. In addition to the fish, Jimmy managed to bring home a shellfish today. It is eaten raw with vinegar or salt added for taste. But the shell is kept aside for Jimmy to sell.
Nabangan niya nakima. Hindi nga nakinaitan na bari buhat eh. Katis kinait bari niluwan na ni bangka. Patuhon na isab. Pagka na mga niya raing ayahe pinanahe. Bangan niya taluwa pa na pinana na isab tinuhog. Akatis eh bangan niya raing. Halaman niya raing niya kimahin nga na isab. Niluwan ni bangka. Pagkabot eh bang sa pamatapon na ora, namuli na. Sagwa, ang aka kita matuhan, ang kana kumakalangan mareo eh. Natuhan niya magkinabayaan, namuan nawa. Mga laman niya jawa, bang balkabantuhan, makalang, alam kita nawa, bang kita kalangan, bang makapadunapad di. Alaman niya kusog, tasagwa tuhan niya ang ano, makita ang kan kita kalangan, ang kan kita kusog.
The Bajaus have learnt to coexist with the water by adapting to the impulses of the ocean, but they have also used their expertise to assemble an indispensable tool of their trade, the spear gun. Oceans to build their communities. These communities have turned to innovation and ingenuity to build tools to help them cope with the erratic moods of the sea. The Bajau tribe in the Philippines have always been using spears to hunt for fish, but these masters of the sea have fashioned a much more modern weapon from their tradition. The Bajau use the pana, a spear gun. It is a quintessential tool passed down through the generations, and the primary way any Bajau will hunt for fish. Jimmy, as an experienced fisherman, crafts a pana for one of his protégés.
Wata ko ng pana, ito man karikiriki ko, gitinoon ako sa magto ako, nanakan ko, iya ito tarabahoon maghinang pana, ang tigad pana, ang luwang basi.
The pana is made primarily from timber and other easily found materials like copper pipes. Firstly, Jimmy utilizes a machete to painstakingly craft and shape the body of the spear gun. Using only a hammer and a screwdriver, he then carefully fashions a tiny hole in the rod, which will eventually be used as the spear.
Samputon si Milma, magpabot niluma, naniya na tinatan na nilamuran na yan kinakan. Iyabalian na binuwa kalaya pinabalian. Mga niya malian na mga tabali na napamali na kinakan. Kati siya kakan na muli na nilumag bala.
To sharpen the tip of the rod, Jimmy hammers down on it repeatedly, and cuts out an angled section of it. He then uses the same cut-out section, inserting it into the hole to use as a makeshift hook.
Nabang tawon na marilaw, ti agtilod na basi, wakati sa agtilod basi ang mampana, patuhon na. Pagtuhon akan na narayang ang piha, mga niya rayang nagtapiha, na pinana na. Tapos, mga niya rayang tinuhog ni nylon, bagi pariyata, bang may pali, patuhon na isab, amihan na isab mareo. Pehe, ang limutan, mga niya talibod dahing alahi, pinana na iya, katis pinana mga niya narayang taluwa, tinuhog na isab maka nylon. At ibangka napalabo. Bagi ni bangka, akatis ba nilaan pa na tinuhog.
Once the rubber band is stretched back and fastened to the tip of the nozzle, the pana is ready. Jimmy needs to test it and iron out any kinks before he can use it underwater as an effective homemade hunting weapon. The extraordinary velocity generated by the spear gun speaks volumes about the Bajau's traditional lifestyle. Even with the use of everyday materials like rubber, these hunters have crafted a hunting weapon that is simple yet highly effective.
Kaya ang kanak kung balang ang gamit po ko, timbalak ko tao magtahi ba, diyaw man ako ito. Iya gamit ko pa, nahal, iya iluhal gamit ba, diyaw halaman niya pokot. Kaya balak ko tao, magtahi pokot ilo, aglamba, napana ito akatis niyan patuhon nahal.
The Bajau are sea gypsies, and boats are a necessity in their lives. Although many Bajau have settled closer to land, the importance of their boats has not diminished. With fishing being the principal industry of these people, the craft of boat making has become just as vital. 55-year-old Feliciano Canani is a boat maker who, when not making new boats, can be found refurbishing old ones.
Nabangya na iya trabaho ko, bang akong balo sa banya, mag-usaha ka, buwan niya hinang ko na, maghinang na pa na ko, nabang ha. Nayanahe bang ka, bang halunas na pahan kumarin.
Feliciano has been doing this for 40 years, working his way up from apprentice to now imparting his knowledge to the younger generation.
Naalam do sa baniya, ito amando anak ko na buya Tuhan niya, buat na matao kita, buat ala ko magsagapal ali Tuhan. Naman dyan buat kinasaya sabi ako, Tuhan, ito yung magtrabaho, na buat akatis sabi ko, ya trabaho. Luma at tawabangka, ala ko magsagapan ni Tuhan.
The boat makers in the Bajau community are pillars of the society. The Bajau's daily coexistence with the water surrounding them leans heavily on their use of boats. Without craftsmen like Feliciano refurbishing old boats and making new ones, the community would invariably come to a standstill. It's tough work for Feliciano, but he carries it out with immense pride.
Umbal na buat gamit kami sa mabang di importante nagbuat gamit kami pag-usahaan, ya buat hinangko, bang niya baniya pamili ko, na mga laman niya, na buat kami na, anong ko na kami maluma, buat niya sa diano, kami dengan makarangan sa anak ko. Iya bang niya buat na saka mag-ahaya na, saka maglimandap pa na, saka mag-3,000, abot mag-5,000, na bang sa bariki do sa saka buat ito na, saka mag-2,000,
The boat makers of the Bajau are a cornerstone of this seafaring tribe, with their tremendous contributions to their people's lifestyle.
Yan na to sa baho, banga sa balaman niya iya pag ano baruto ya ilo sab kaluman kami niya ho. Sa minsan sab kami magusahan bang lam na sa banya ina hinang kami pa bangka ilo niya sa ano sa niya ban kami.
Although the Bajau have slowly transitioned away from their roots as nomads, living purely on water, they have still held on to their traditional culture. With night falling on Tutulan Dawis, Bohol's Bajau village, the sound of music fills the air. Celebrations are in order for a 3-day wedding ceremony. For the first 2 days, the Bajau women perform a traditional folk dance at the village's hall. Lorna Kuam is one of the many women who participate in the festivities and perform this folk dance.
Yung preparation namin, bago kami pumunta sa wedding dance namin, ay mag-makeup kami muna, tapos mag-earrings, mag-kwintas, at mag-bracelet. Tapos titingin kami sa salamin kung nakaayos na kami.
The communal dance is called Angigal, with only the women participating. They form their own groups and take turns to perform the traditional dance.
Naano na namin nung nakatatandaan, until now, alam na namin yung mga sayo kasi bali ito ang tradisyon namin. Pag may ikakasal, yun, magtitibit ka doon, sasayaw ka. Mga babae at mga bata laman pwede. Ang mga lalaki pwede sumasayaw pag siya ang ikakasal. Pero pag hindi, ang mga lalaki ay upo lang, titingin. Pero yung mga babaeng matanda, maliit, dalaga, yun ang pwede sumasayaw doon sa wedding ceremony namin.
Angigal is a tribute to the Bajau's way of life, filled with movements that are inspired by their life at sea.
Ang sayaw namin ay tinatawag na magigal. Tapos yung kamay namin ay parang dagat nga umalong at yung bewang namin ay parang mga isda nga sumasayaw.
The Bajau's art and culture imitates their life. It is so deeply imbued with their seagoing lifestyle that one can't help but think that the sea is just the natural extension of their lives. The sea is more than just a resource for the Bajau, comforting and nurturing them in equal measure. From the importance of their fishing to their boat making, and the way these remarkable men and women have naturally coexisted with these vast bodies of water, the Bajau have earned the right to call the sea their home. They are truly the masters of the sea.
Ang kana kung bal makausama rin ay ipausa ko yung marilaw apa kami natural sama. Ya hero pausa ko yung misan na niya saddi. Alaman niya na saddi pausa ko yung na marilaw tito.
With the world's population striving to find more and more land to live on, the ancient tribes of the Uros and the Bajau are a reminder of a simpler time. A time where people had a much more intimate relationship with their environment, living with the water and not just exploiting it. These communities need to be celebrated and respected for their ability to coexist with some of the toughest landscapes of our grand Earth.